welcome everyone. My name's Sue Elson. I'm an independent LinkedIn specialist and career development practitioner, and it's great to be here at the Melbourne Careers Expo, Sunday 17th of July. This session is on how to choose your next job or career, so if you've got any questions you'd like to ask as I go through the slides, feel free to do so. Also, at the end I'll be available for questions as well. Just to give you a tiny bit of background on me, I started my career at Westpac in Adelaide in 1982 and worked there for 11 years, came to Melbourne and haven't had a real job since. So I've done lots of different things, set up Newcomers Network in 2001 online, Capital Network in 2012, written books, member of associations, do lots of different and interesting things, but also do a lot of voluntary work as well. So really enjoy that component of my life. So, the number one tip that I recommend if you're thinking about changing your job or career, this might sound a bit strange because you say, shouldn't I choose my career before I update my LinkedIn profile? But all of us have had some sort of work experience. Even if it's straight out of school, you can still finish a LinkedIn profile. And you need to record on that LinkedIn profile everything you've done up until now, because there's lots of transferable skills that you've got, and that process should give you the opportunity to reflect on what you've enjoyed throughout your career so far, the tasks, the people you've worked with, the industry you've been in. So you might have really loved working somewhere because it was great people and it was terrible jobs to do, and somewhere else you might have worked, the job was terrible but the people were great. So important to reflect on that. And also consider what are your deal breakers going forward. So one of the people I worked with today said that for him the workplace culture was the number one thing that he had to have right in his next job. So think about what those are. And there's a little link in each of these slides to more information, and that one's on how to create a good LinkedIn profile. The next one is to reflect on your values, strengths and context. So some years ago I spent 3 years reading books, Do What You Love, The Money Will Follow, Find Your Purpose in Life, What Colour Is Your Parachute, and it was really frustrating because none of these books gave me the answers I was looking for. I spent 3 years reading all these books, and not just those ones, but several others. And I ended up creating something called a mind map, and I'll be showing you that slide and the link to that shortly. But the things that I think are really important when determining what you're going to be doing in the future are your values, which is what is important to you, but also the value you can provide to somebody else, whether that be a job or a business or an enterprise of some sort if you're doing a not-for-profit. Your strengths, both natural and acquired. So I'm really good at accounting, but I hate it. I'm also really good at digital, but I had to learn all those skills. So think about what your strengths are and also your context. So when I had young children and I didn't have family around, I couldn't work full time. I couldn't have an option for that. So I had to come up with different ideas for that period of my life. And now my circumstances have changed and I've got other options available to me. So the articles here are talking about the context, the first one. The second one about plans or principles, because since COVID, a lot of people have changed what's important to them. So I think it's important to consider, do I follow some set out plan or do I just have some guidelines that I operate in now? And then I was also interviewed very recently on a podcast about why I chose to become what I call a gigster, which is a person who uses technology to attract aligned gigs. So I don't have a regular job, I just do a whole bunch of different things, and I've done that since 1994, which is pretty unusual. Not a lot of people do that. So after you've done your updated your LinkedIn profile and your resume, you've thought about your values, strengths and context, now you've got to think about how did I get to this point in my life? Who has been guiding my decisions? Did my parents tell me I should work at a bank? Yes, they did. Did your friends say you'd be really good at something? What has ended up happening just because somebody knew somebody and it ended up that you ended up being there? So think about the difference between the skills to do a job and the skills to get a job. They are two different sets of skills. So the reason a lot of people end up in boring jobs is because they just ended up with whatever happened. They didn't actually learn the skills to get the job they wanted. And they weren't clear about what job it is that they wanted to get. So it made it even harder to get that. Also, if you're a member of a professional association, they quite often have a mentoring program that you can access for free. So sometimes it can be definitely worth joining that and speaking to people in your association or industry group. And you can also get professional career assistance. So next door is the Career Development Association of Australia. They're offering free sessions today. But if you go to the CDAA website, you can speak to somebody individually and they can get you professional assistance. I've also linked to an article on the top changes from a different career expo and also this process of doing the mind map. So as a result of reading all those books and not getting the answers I wanted, I developed this mind map. And believe it or not, it's actually a really old mind map. But because there are so many choices, and obviously even just in the Career Expo there's a lot of choices, how do we work out which choices are going to be relevant for us? And the best way to do that, in my view, is to have a decision-making framework. So if I know what it is that is within my guidelines, then I can say yes, and if it's not within my guidelines, I can say no. So in the middle of the circle are my non-negotiables. And because this is values-based, it's all aligned to what I want. So it's not about did I tick a box and meet that criteria, it's about what's important to me. So then what I did is I did a brain dump of everything I'd done up until that point, and then I left it for a day and I came back and I circled the things that were most important to me. That's the green highlighter. So that then gave me my own little roadmap to help me choose what it would be I would do next. So this is just one method, and there's some more available on the My Future website. So you can sign up for free there and you can do a little careers quiz, and there's all sorts of information about individual jobs there. It also says for each individual job the professional association related to it. So you could check out that association and see the resources they've got. The Victorian Government has put out a Finding a Job guide, and then also you may be able to get access to a Jobs Victoria Career Counsellor. So that may also be helpful to you. And then of course, as I said before, you can come see us at the CDAA stand, or you can visit the CDAA website. Now when you go through the list of practitioners, it could be difficult for you to pick which practitioner would be the best one for you. So I suggest you look at their LinkedIn profile, see if they've got contacts in the industries you're interested in, and see whether their background experience would be relatable to you. And I usually suggest that you book a 1 hour appointment first, and that's when you get to meet them and actually discover whether you're going to work together on an ongoing basis, rather than sign up for a 10 system thing. You know, you might not like each other after the first one and you've paid for 10 sessions. So that's another thing. Now, a lot of employers will, particularly larger employers, have something called an employee assistance program. So you can contact the employee assistance program and explain, I need to consider other options or whatever, and you might be able to be referred onto some support there. And then if you lost your job, you may have been given the opportunity to have outplacement services. Now, some people say, I hated that job, I don't want anything more to do with it, I'm not going to do the outplacement. This is not a good idea. It is very worthwhile to take up any offer for outplacement so that they can update your resume, your LinkedIn, give you some guidelines. So if you are offered outplacement services or cash, I would say take the outplacement services, much more beneficial to you. You can speak to recruiters, but you really need to be selective about the types of recruiters you talk to, because at the end of the day, a recruiter is representing the organisation, not you, the candidate. You're not paying them, so why should they give you advice? But if they are a recruiter who has been in the recruitment industry for more than 3 years and they specialise in a particular industry, then that could be a recruiter that is worth talking to, because they might be interested in having you in their database for opportunities that come up if they specialise in a particular industry. And then finally, in the education field, so perhaps you've done some study, get friendly with your lecturers, because quite often lecturers will be contacted and said, who's a good student? And then you can get a job through that channel as well. Also, reconsider the advice that you've got from well-meaning friends and relatives. As I said, I haven't had a real job since 1994. The number of times my family have said, Sue, just get a real job. I cannot tell you how many times that has happened. And it can be really soul destroying if somebody's always telling you, just get a job, just get anything, just this, just that. So when people say those, well-meaning things, please say, thanks for your advice. I am taking my own path here. I'm doing what feels right for me, whatever excuse you want to give them. But remember that their perspective comes from their experience. It's not necessarily going to be the best thing for you. I have a friend who tells me I should cut my hair. I like my hair long, so I'm not cutting my hair. But if I listened to her, I would have just gone out and cut my hair. What a crazy idea. So yeah, just think about, do these people really have your best interests at heart? Other people will say, oh, you should go here because if you accept that job, they get a cash payment. And that happens quite a lot as well. So, you might end up in some job you hate just because they convinced you to go and get it. And yeah, just be aware of these things. Now the next step is to be practical. At the end of the day, if you've got bills to pay and no income coming in, you might have to accept a job, not that's unsafe, but wouldn't be your first choice. And that's okay. I call that a job for now. And I've had quite a few gigs that are jobs for now, things that I really hated. I remember one gig I picked up and I had to go through like 500 pages of this guy's course materials and update them. I ended up giving it to somebody else. I couldn't do it. It was just doing my head in. And it was all about air conditioning vents and maintenance of buildings, and it was just so boring. I just couldn't do it. But if I was in a situation where I had to earn a living, I would have done it. Okay? So sometimes we do have to have those jobs for now. But also, we don't necessarily have to rush out and get a postgraduate qualification or a bachelor's degree or some lengthy course. A lot of jobs you can actually sometimes get by doing what's called a micro-credential, a short course, either online or in person. And then if you've checked it out that way and you like it, then you can consider the next step. Now, a friend of mine, he went from being a database administrator, which is basically a computer programmer, and he wanted to become a data scientist, which is very different. It's more business analysis and using formulas to interpret data. It's very different to just programming. Now what he did is he did a whole bunch of online courses. Some he paid like $60 to get the certificate from all these universities from all around the world. And he went straight from a job at $150,000 a year to a new job at $150,000 a year, which is really unusual when you're changing careers to end up in the same salary, same level position, moving across. So then he went out and said, maybe I should get a master's of data science. I said, before you pay for that course, I want you to see the content of the course, who's teaching it, and find out the details before you pay thousands and thousands for this master's. And when he found out all the details, the course was 5 years out of date. So he could have done the course and then it have actually not been helpful to him. So yeah, consider those free and low cost options first. Consider getting some work experience. So another person who I met at Career Expo, she'd been in banking like me, but she wanted to fly planes. And to get a commercial pilot's license is a very expensive activity. So I said, well, there's somebody else I know, and they were a helicopter pilot, and they felt after a while they were just a glorified machine operator. It wasn't that interesting, up, down, round, same old thing every day. And so I said, why don't you pay for 10 flying lessons? So don't do the course, just go out and do 10 flying lessons and find out whether this really is what you really, really want to do, and then make the decision to go ahead and do the commercial pilot's license course if that's what you want to do. So sometimes there's these other options. I also went to a conference on unemployment, and I was really disappointed by the advice they gave to people who are unemployed. So after I got home, I wrote this really long article, so if you want to read that, you can check that one out. And then consequently, I went to a different event and I sat next to a man who was very arrogant. So again, I went home and I started writing again, and that was for over 50s, and then I wrote articles for people under 30 and between 30 and 50. So if you're not sure about, how to just get something, those articles are helpful, not nasty. The The next thing is to be courageous. Now, even the fact you're here is a sign of you want something to be, different in your life. And I encourage you to do anything that could be classified as difficult, but definitely not dangerous. I don't want you injuring yourself and ending up in a difficult, a dangerous situation. But sometimes things can be difficult, and something difficult could be just to come to the Career Expo, but you got here, and that's a good thing. So please keep that in mind. Even if it's not difficult for somebody else, that doesn't matter. If it's difficult for you and you do it, you will get a really great feeling out of that. I'd also like to encourage you to celebrate your achievements. So it can be very easy when you've said, I've got to change, I've got to get out of here, this job's terrible, to forget all the things that you've done really, really well up until this point. So please reflect not just on the shitty boss you have to work with and how awful it is going in the car and the traffic or whatever. Think about some of the good things from it. And also take on the approach of no regrets and from now on. So I got sacked when I was pregnant, and believe it or not, I was angry for 6.5 years over being sacked. So I read this book called Radical Forgiveness, and it suggested that I needed to work out what I needed to do to get over my anger from being sacked. And what I realised was I didn't feel as if I had any say in the situation. So I wrote this organisation a letter and I said, I'm not going to sue you, but what happened I didn't feel good about. I understand the reasons you may have done it, but I just want you to know I, was hurt or something to that effect. And I said, please send me a letter to say that you've received this correspondence. And I got the letter back in the post, and that 6.5 years of anger went out the window. So I had to do what was right for me to get over that challenge. Now, if I think back to what did that challenge create, it meant that I haven't had a real job ever since, and I've done the most amazing different things that I would never have done if I just stayed in employment. So they actually did me a huge favour. But at the time, I didn't see that, okay? So try not to beat yourself up. And I've written a poem there about difficult, not dangerous. The next thing to do is to consider doing some voluntary work. And this is a really great way, again, to see what something's like. It will get you out of the house, you'll be doing something new, you'll be meeting new people, you'll be able to network, make new friends, get referrals, and you can add any of those achievements. Now, I'm not suggesting that you work for 60 hours a week for free. Definitely not. But if you can go out and try a few new things, that can be really good. If you also know somebody who needs to be told to go out and get a job, sometimes that can be difficult as well. So there's a little article there on how you can help someone when they won't listen to your advice, when they kind of need it for their own personal safety. Now the next thing is, sometimes you think, I've got to change everything in my life. I'm going to move, I'm going to give up all of this, and it's all going to be different when I go to the new location. So I've been working with people who've moved since 2001, and I can tell you, if you move, your problems go with you. It doesn't mean that you lose all your problems, okay? Because there's usually lots of stuff going on. So what I would like to suggest is sometimes there's a way for you to improve where you are now before you make this big leap, and you do it in sort of smaller stages rather than just overnight change everything. So there might be a way. I was actually, when I was working in the bank, they suggested I do an assertiveness skills course. I thought, I don't need an assertiveness skills course. But then when I went to it, I realised I did need assertiveness skills. So maybe there's a way for you to speak up, for you to discuss with your employer different arrangements, consider another role within the organisation. Could be other options. You can have a job for now. Maybe there's another aspect of your life. Maybe your relationship is terrible, or you have an arguments with a parent, or there's something else going on. Maybe that's the real issue. And also, could further education be helpful to you? So for example, I was working with this amazing woman who worked in New York, and she came to boring old Melbourne, and she was in public relations in New York, very glamorous type of position. But now she was in Melbourne, and she had 2 children and an older husband, and life was just a little bit twee and a bit boring. And so anyway, I suggested that she could perhaps consider doing some study in an area that she had always wanted, and it turned out to be graphic design. And so she went along and did that graphic design course, and all of a sudden she met all these people that she really got on with, and she got to learn a skill that she'd always wanted to do, and suddenly life in Melbourne turned out to be better than she expected. And plus the fact, because her kids were settling so well in Australia, that worked as well. So that might be an option. Another thing is, do you need some counselling to overcome a past trauma? Now, obviously, COVID has brought up lots of issues for lots of people, but there could be some deeper issues still there. And sometimes, if you're still bitter and twisted about your boss or something that's happened, it can be hard to move on. So one person I met, he was working in a Defence Department role, but as a civilian, not as a Defence employee. And he wanted to get out of Defence and back into the private workforce. And it turns out he was a little bit bitter about some of the things that had happened whilst he was in that job. And so I said to him, he has to resolve all those issues before he goes on to the next job, because what can happen is he says, oh yeah, I was in Defence and I didn't like it, and then that's going to reflect badly on him. But there was actually a lot of things about his Defence job he really loved. So he got to do things in Defence that he had never done in the private sector. So once he'd sort of balanced out the good and the bad of that job and had a narrative that he could share when he went for the next job, it was much easier for him to transition back into private enterprise. And could you have more fun in your life? Like, you know, when was the last time you really did something fun? And I don't mean turn on Netflix. I mean actually go out and have fun. Sometimes that can make a big difference to how you feel about your job and career. So I've written a couple of articles there about self-love and beliefs and the scripts that you've been running. Like my family calls me the academic, and then one of my siblings says, oh, I'm the person who never finishes anything. And the reason she used to call me that was because I did a TAFE course, a business certificate in banking, and I didn't complete it because it was a waste of my time, it just didn't align, and then I went on and did a degree. But she calls me the person who quits, you know, ridiculous. So sometimes there's these scripts that we have running that are not really who we are as individuals. There's another one about the job for now and how to change your life in 10 years or less as well. So can you start small? So when I'm working with somebody who says, Sue, I want to change, and I say, all right, are you prepared for me to tell you how long this could take? And they say yes, and I said, are you really prepared? And they say yes, and then I say 2 years, and then their face goes white. They cannot believe I'm suggesting it would take 2 years to change. Now, the benefit of saying it's going to take 2 years is, first of all, that's a reasonable time frame, but 2 weeks is not a reasonable time frame, okay? So if you're thinking that all this can happen in 2 weeks and it doesn't, you're going to be very disappointed in yourself. But if you say, look, let's allow 2 years and it ends up happening in 3 months, you're going to be ecstatic. So set some realistic expectations. Many of us underestimate what we can do in the long term and overestimate what we can do in the short term. So I'm here to say, give yourself 2 years to be in that position where you're comfortable and it's all aligned. Also, can you manage your finances? So another client I had, he had come from overseas. He had connected with an entrepreneur about 15 years before, and this was the Jetstar lifestyle and trips all around the world, first class, and you name it. He was doing all of this stuff, and then he gets to Melbourne, and then he has to settle his family in Melbourne, and then he has to get a job. And so he's thinking of the 5-star lifestyle job, but he doesn't need a 5-star lifestyle to live in Melbourne. And then when he realised that, he didn't go chasing that ridiculously high salary. He actually realised if he managed his money a little bit better, he could do something which was much more aligned to what he wanted in his life, and then that was the change he made. So rather just automatically go for another 5-star version. Can you reflect on what's really important to you in your life? So for me, I have to have variety. I can't stand the same thing every day. I need to be with people, I need time alone, I need to be using technology. All these things are part of who I am. So think about what yours are. And also, a lot of people come to me, oh, all the jobs go to the young people, and I'm 57, right? And I say, well, do you want to work for $20 an hour and 40 hours a week? Oh no, I'm worth way more than that. And I'll say, well, that's what the young person's working for, so do you want that? No. And I said, well, Would you like to be working 2 days a week and getting paid what you're worth, given your experience and the value you can offer your employer? Oh yeah, that'd be great, because I could still play golf and whatever. So do you see what I'm saying? You've got to move beyond your perception of, I can't get a job because of my skin colour or my age or my disability. All these things are irrelevant. Sometimes we use them as reasons not to take that next step. So there's an article here on having an accountability partner. So that means you match up with someone and you share your stories. Mentoring, making resolutions, different ways to find work from home. Do you use those excuses? So I call it the cards of illness. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't come, I've got a headache. No, you just couldn't be bothered getting off the couch. You know, like, do you play that card? And also partners in business and life. So sometimes it's best not to ask a family member for help. It's best to ask somebody outside of that circle. The last tip I'd like to share is to say thank you. So if somebody does give you something that's really helpful, say thank you to them. People appreciate it when you say thank you. If you send them a card, they're more likely to keep it, but you can also do it electronically with an online review. Lots of people only write reviews when something goes wrong, but you can obviously write reviews when it goes well. And also if you say thank you after a job interview and say, oh, you know, I missed out, but please keep me in mind for another job, that could also lead to something as well. In the thank you, don't just say thanks for the opportunity, say thank you for the opportunity to have a lengthy interview to discuss details about the organisation and the role in depth, you know, because that's a much more informative response. And also be discerning about who you get advice from. So if somebody represents an educational facility and they say, oh, you need to do this course, well, of course they're going to say that because then they've just sold a course. Now, I'm not saying don't get a course. I mean, sometimes the course is fantastic, but think about the agenda of the person giving you that advice, because there might be something else going on. And also, say thank you to the friends and family that support you, because some of them might be looking after you whilst you're in this transitional phase or the grumpy patch or whatever it is. So say thanks to them as well. So if you would like a copy of these slides and the invitation to connect on LinkedIn, you can scan that code, I'll send it to you. I'm recording this so that it can go on YouTube. If you want to share it, you're most welcome to do so. And I'm happy to answer any questions, either publicly or if you want to come up to me afterwards. Any questions to start? It's always good to have somebody else ask a question. Maybe I've covered everything.
When you say you take 10 years to change your life.
2 years.
2 years. I thought it said 10 years.
No, that was an article I wrote about changing my life in 10 years. Yeah.
I was just going to say, when you think about a career, you may not have 10 years left.
No.
Where do you justify making it effort?
Well, it doesn't mean you do nothing for 2 years. Like, you don't say I'm starting today and then do nothing and expect, 2 years to be magic. It means that it gives you that 2 years to take steps towards that new direction, if that's relevant for you. So every time you do something on that direction, you're actually moving towards, something else. It doesn't mean just stop everything and only do that. Yeah. I assume I'll be working forever, as until I drop dead, but not, 80 hours a week. Any other questions? All good? Hello, and you're welcome to grab a business card as well. I'm happy to answer quick questions directly online if you prefer to do that as well. Thank you.